I have to admit, I never thought I'd be making a video like this. Quantum computers hacking Bitcoin. It sounds like sci-fi paranoia, right? But here I am, genuinely concerned. And for good reason. See, I clicked on an article about Google's latest quantum breakthrough, and a chill went down my spine. If you're a crypto investor like me, you clicked on this video for the same reason. Something about quantum computing and Bitcoin in the title made you curious, and maybe a bit nervous. Well, you're in the right place. Today, I'm taking you on a personal investigation into how Google's new quantum computer milestone could threaten Bitcoin, and what that means for all of us holding BTC. Now stick with me, because this isn't just another doom and gloom piece. It's a story with twists, a looming danger, yes, but also a way forward that might turn this threat into an opportunity. And it all starts with what Google just pulled off in their lab. Not long ago, Google announced a quantum computing breakthrough so significant that it made headlines across tech and crypto circles. In October 2025, their team revealed an algorithm called Quantum Echoes, running on a cutting-edge Willow quantum chip, which achieved something unprecedented: a calculation 13,000 times faster than one of the world's fastest supercomputers. To put it in perspective, they solved in minutes a problem that would take a classical supercomputer literally billions of years, 10 to the 25th power years, which is 100 trillion times the age of the universe. Let that sink in. A task that would outlast the stars was finished in 5 minutes. Okay, cool. Google can now model molecules and physics problems at ludicrous speed. But what does that have to do with Bitcoin? Here's the punchline that made my stomach drop. Google's researchers themselves pointed out that this brings quantum computing much closer to real-world applications, including potentially swiping Bitcoin straight from holders' wallets. Yes, they explicitly mentioned Bitcoin in the same breath as medicine and materials science. That was my wake-up call. Quantum computing is no longer just a lab experiment. It's edging into the real world, and one of the real-world targets on the horizon is the encryption that protects our crypto. One quantum computing researcher, Pierre-Luc Dallaire-Demers, commented on Google's news by saying, "Google just keeps delivering milestones on schedule, and that's how the threat for Bitcoin will become increasingly more real." In other words, each quantum leap, no pun intended, is bringing the day closer when a quantum computer might crack the cryptography behind Bitcoin. How close? Dallaire-Demers has predicted that at this pace, a powerful enough quantum computer could break Bitcoin's encryption within 4 to 5 years. 4 to 5 years. When I read that, I had to pause and reread it. As someone who's been in Bitcoin for a while, I always heard quantum is decades away, don't worry. But now credible experts are talking half a decade. Even if you think that sounds too soon, consider this. Other respected researchers aren't far off. Another quantum expert in the field, Paolo Viana, reckons maybe 8 years until Bitcoin is at risk, not much comfort, as he himself admits that even 8 years seems to be concerning at least. The takeaway? Whether it's 5 years or 10, it's within our lifetimes, potentially within this decade, and Google's latest feat just poured gasoline on that timeline. As one headline put it, Google's quantum breakthrough makes the Bitcoin threat more real. I don't know about you, but hearing that made me imagine a clock suddenly ticking faster on Bitcoin's wall. So what exactly is this threat? How could a quantum computer hack Bitcoin, which has long been touted as virtually unbreakable? To answer that, we need to talk about the cryptographic guts of Bitcoin, in plain English. Bitcoin's security rests on some pretty advanced math, but I'll keep it simple. When you hold Bitcoin, what you actually control is a pair of cryptographic keys: a private key, secret, and a public key, shared. When you send Bitcoin, you sign the transaction with your private key, and the network can verify that signature using your public key. This magic is made possible by an algorithm called ECDSA, elliptic curve digital signature algorithm, which is super hard for normal computers to break. In fact, hard to break is an understatement. With classical computers, it's practically impossible to derive someone's private key from their public key. That's why your Bitcoin is considered safe. Enter quantum computers. These machines work differently, leveraging quantum physics, and they can run certain algorithms that just laugh at our traditional cryptography. One such algorithm is Shor's algorithm, and it's the kryptonite for ECDSA. A sufficiently powerful quantum computer running Shor's algorithm could, in theory, calculate the private key from a Bitcoin public key astonishingly fast, essentially undoing the cryptographic puzzle that protects your coins. If that happens, all bets are off. A quantum attacker could forge your digital signature and spend your Bitcoin without your permission, effectively stealing it. And not just your Bitcoin, but any Bitcoin tied to a public key that a quantum computer can get its qubits on. How many Bitcoin are vulnerable? Here's a number that keeps me up at night. About 25% of all Bitcoin in circulation, worth over $500 billion at recent prices, are estimated to be vulnerable to a quantum attack right now. Yes, a quarter of the entire Bitcoin supply could be snatched if someone built a big enough quantum computer tomorrow. This isn't some blogger's speculation. It's based on analysis by Deloitte in 2024 and echoed by other researchers. Why only 25% and not all Bitcoin? The difference comes down to how Bitcoin addresses have been used. Without getting too technical, some Bitcoin, especially older ones, have their public keys exposed on the blockchain, while others, mostly newer addresses, keep the public key hidden behind a hash until you spend the coins. Older addresses, like those created in Bitcoin's early days, are the low-hanging fruit for a quantum attack. In fact, the first addresses to fall would be those old pay-to-public key wallets from before 2012 that didn't use the modern hashing technique. Guess who owns a lot of those coins? Satoshi Nakamoto, the mysterious creator of Bitcoin. Satoshi's stash of about 1.1 million BTC, worth over $100 billion today, is sitting in such vulnerable addresses. Those coins haven't moved in approximately 14 years, and unless Satoshi comes out of retirement to move them, they're basically sitting ducks for a quantum thief. Can you imagine the irony of Bitcoin's inventor having their coins stolen first? Wild. Beyond Satoshi's coins, a Human Rights Foundation report noted roughly 6 million BTC in total are held in quantum vulnerable accounts. That's around 1/3 of all Bitcoin, including Satoshi's trove. It's not just a theoretical risk. If you've reused a wallet address or used certain types of smart contracts, even some fancy new taproot addresses, your public key might already be exposed on-chain, making those funds a future target. Now, even if your coins are in a modern address that hasn't revealed its public key yet, a quantum computer could still get you during a transaction. Here's a scary scenario. You go to send some Bitcoin to someone. The moment you broadcast the transaction, your public key is revealed in the transaction data. Normally, that's fine because no regular computer can steal your key in the 10 minutes or so before it's confirmed in a block. But a quantum computer could potentially snatch your private key from that public key within seconds, and then inject its own transaction to steal your coins before yours confirms. In essence, a quantum attacker could intercept and redirect your Bitcoin mid-transfer, like a hacker grabbing your cash in the few seconds it's in transit. If that doesn't make you gulp, I don't know what will. Perhaps the eeriest part of all this is that we might not even realize when the first quantum heist happens. Experts point out that if someone was using a quantum computer to steal crypto, it would just look like regular transactions on the blockchain. No alarm bells, no flashy warning saying quantum attack in progress. Coins would simply move from old addresses, and people might chalk it up to long-lost holders finally waking up, at least until patterns emerge or the thief makes a grand announcement. In other words, by the time we know Quantum Day has arrived, it might already be too late for those targeted funds. Now, I can almost hear the skeptics and, honestly, a voice in my own head saying, all right, this sounds terrifying, but isn't it a bit hyped? Are we sure this is a real, near-term threat? It's true that not everyone agrees on the timing or likelihood. Some well-known crypto folks like cypherpunk Jameson Lopp suspect that the fear of quantum computing may be a bigger risk than the thing itself, at least right now. Overblown fear can lead to poor decisions or scams in the name of quantum-proof solutions. I get that. But on the other hand, people like Vitalik Buterin, Ethereum's co-founder and one of crypto's brightest minds, aren't brushing it off. Vitalik recently said there's roughly a 20% chance that quantum computers capable of breaking current cryptography will exist by 2030. A 1 in 5 chance within the next 5 years. Those are not comforting odds. Even Vitalik's estimate implies we can't just ignore this. And importantly, nobody credible is saying the threat is zero. The consensus I'm seeing is quantum is a real risk. We just debate when it hits, not if. So if you're feeling a bit unsettled right now, that makes 2 of us, or thousands of us. But don't panic, because next, I want to explore what we can actually do about it. This is where the story gets interesting, shifting from fear to innovation. Before we jump to solutions, I need to slip in a quick but crucial note. Disclaimer, I'm not a financial advisor and nothing in this video is financial advice. This is for educational purposes and just sharing my personal findings. Crypto is risky and this topic is speculative. So do your own research before making any decisions. All right, back to the investigation. When I realized the quantum threat was real, my next thought was, okay, what do we do about it? Is Bitcoin doomed or can it adapt? The good news is that this threat is also sparking some ingenious solutions. It's like a game of chess. Quantum computing makes a move. Now the crypto community and cryptographers are making theirs. Let's talk about a few potential moves Bitcoin could make to become quantum resistant. Bitcoin's current security, ECDSA and SHA-256, wasn't designed with quantum computers in mind, but there are alternative cryptographic algorithms that are believed to be quantum resistant. These include things like hash-based signatures, e.g. Lamport signatures, lattice-based cryptography, and others that the US National Institute of Standards and Technology, NIST, has been busy standardizing. In fact, NIST released a set of post-quantum cryptography standards in 2024 and recommended that industries start phasing out quantum vulnerable systems by 2030. So the cavalry is coming in the form of new algorithms. For Bitcoin, this could mean a future upgrade where, instead of ECDSA, it uses a quantum-safe signature scheme. There are already researchers and developers exploring exactly this. Envisioning how Bitcoin could implement, say, lattice-based signatures or hash-based one-time signatures for transactions. The challenge, of course, is huge. Bitcoin can't switch its cryptography overnight. It would require a consensus change, likely a soft fork or hard fork, tons of testing and broad community agreement. That's a slow process, like turning a giant ship, but at least the ship has a direction to turn, toward post-quantum cryptography. Zero-knowledge proofs, ZK Tech to the rescue. This part fascinates me because it sounds almost like using one advanced technology to counter another. Zero-knowledge proofs, ZK proofs, are cryptographic techniques that let you prove something without revealing the secret itself. They're already a hot topic in crypto for privacy and scalability reasons, think Zcash or Ethereum Layer 2s, but now they're being eyed as a quantum defense tool. How so? Well, some forms of ZK proofs can be built on quantum-resistant assumptions. For example, ZK Starks, a type of zero-knowledge proof, rely only on hash functions and information theory. No sensitive elliptic curves to break. Felix Shi, the CEO of ARPA Network, argues that using ZK Tech with hash-based or lattice-based proofs could make blockchain systems like Bitcoin resilient to quantum attacks. In plain terms, you could prove you own Bitcoin or that a transaction is valid without ever exposing a vulnerable public key. The verifier, the network, can be convinced zero knowledge of your secret needed. That's a powerful concept. Even a quantum computer can't steal what isn't revealed. And indeed, ZK Starks are cited as an example because they do not rely on elliptic curves that are vulnerable to quantum attacks. Now, there's a catch, there's always a catch. The current generation of quantum-resistant ZK proofs are big and clunky. They take up a lot of space and computing power. If Bitcoin tried to use them today, transactions would be huge and slow to verify. Not exactly ideal for a global payment system. However, the keyword here is gradual. She and others suggest we could gradually introduce quantum-safe cryptography alongside the old system. Think of it as building a parallel road. Start allowing quantum-safe transactions as an option, even if they're inefficient at first, so that the community can begin migrating. Over time, as quantum computers get closer and the tech improves, Bitcoin could transition fully. This way, we're not waiting until the last minute to do a complete overhaul, which could be chaotic. Instead, we start layering in protections now, during this grace period while quantum computers are still maturing. It's like inoculating the network against a future virus. This coexistence approach is appealing because it provides a transition path, an on-ramp for upgrading security without stranding users who need to learn new tech overnight. Here's an angle not many think of. Quantum technology might also help Bitcoin in unexpected ways. Quantum computers are not just threats, they also bring new capabilities. One example is true randomness. Current blockchains use pseudo-randomness for things like choosing the next block producer, or for lotteries, like randomness in certain smart contracts. Pseudo-randomness can sometimes be gamed or predicted with enough computing power, but quantum mechanics is inherently random at a fundamental level. She pointed out that the true randomness provided by quantum technology can eliminate manipulability in block proposer selection or decentralized lotteries, making these processes more fair and unhackable. Imagine a future where the Bitcoin network, or another blockchain, uses a quantum random beacon to choose miners or validators in a way that no one can rig. That would be a win for decentralization and security, courtesy of the same tech we're fearing right now. In other words, quantum can be both the sword and the shield. It threatens our cryptography, but it can also bolster our systems if we harness it correctly. The broader point here is that every disruptive technology cuts both ways. Yes, quantum computing could be hugely disruptive, even beyond crypto. Think internet security, banking, government secrets, etc., all relying on encryption. But it also forces evolution. This is where I start to see the opportunity hidden in the crisis. If the crypto community rises to the challenge, Bitcoin could emerge stronger, more secure, and even gain new features like better privacy or fairness as a result of implementing quantum-resistant tech. Let's zoom out for a moment. While I was researching all this, I had a bit of an epiphany. I realized that we've been here before, in a sense, not with quantum computers, that's new, but with grand doomsday predictions for Bitcoin. Over the years, how many times have we heard Bitcoin is dead, or X will be the end of Bitcoin? Too many to count. Every time, Bitcoin either survived, adapted, or the threat was less severe than advertised. I'm not saying we ignore the quantum threat. We absolutely should not ignore it. What I'm saying is, this could become another chapter in Bitcoin's resilience story. Think about it. The very fact we're discussing this now, in 2025, means the community has time to respond. We're seeing early signs of coordination. Just this year, there was a summit, the Presidio Bitcoin Quantum Summit, where core developers, physicists, and cryptographers all got together to hash out this issue. Initially, a lot of attendees weren't sure if quantum would really be a problem. After 2 days of intense discussion, a large majority came around to believing 5 to 20 years is a realistic timeline for quantum threats, and that we need to proactively work on it now. Minds are being changed, efforts are starting. That is huge because the worst case scenario is denial until it's too late. Fortunately, that's not what's happening. However, a fair warning, upgrading Bitcoin's cryptography will not be easy. In fact, it could become one of the most heated debates Bitcoin has ever seen. We've had block size wars, debates over upgrades like SegWit and Taproot, etc. But messing with the signature algorithm, that's touching the sacred core of Bitcoin's security. It introduces questions about backward compatibility, how to deal with coins whose owners are inactive, like those 1.7 million BTC in lost or dormant addresses that can't be moved to new addresses. Do we leave them vulnerable? Burn them somehow? That's a contentious idea. Any change will require convincing a decentralized community of users, miners, exchanges, and node operators. It might literally take years to roll out a full fix, even after the tech is ready. This is why almost every expert echoes, we must start early. As Shai put it, due to the nature of distributed systems, upgrades to base layers like Bitcoin can take years, and responding after quantum actually breaks ECDSA would be too late. In plain speak, if we wait until a quantum computer is stealing coins, it's game over. We won't be able to coordinate a fix in time. The defense has to come before the attack, not after. So consider this video a friendly alarm, not a eulogy. The alarm's ringing and some people are already at work, but more of us need to pay attention. And here's where I tie it back to you, the crypto investor watching. Hi, you might be thinking, all right, interesting stuff, but what do I do with this information? Sell my Bitcoin? Panic? No, that's not what I'm doing, at least. Personally, I haven't sold any of my Bitcoin because of quantum fears. Instead, I'm using this as motivation to stay informed and engaged with the community. I've even been discussing these very developments in our free educational Discord group, where investors and crypto enthusiasts gather to learn without the hype. It's important to separate the real long-term issues from the noise. And lately, the noise in crypto has been loud. Everyone's obsessed with short-term things. The latest ETF rumors, this or that crypto exchange drama, meme coin pumps and dumps, you name it. Those things dominate headlines and YouTube thumbnails, distracting us from slower-burning systemic issues like quantum. But here's the silver lining. If we address the hard issues, like quantum security in time, it can actually reinforce the long-term value of Bitcoin. It's like narrowly escaping a disaster and becoming stronger for it. Imagine a future where headlines say, Bitcoin upgraded now quantum proof. That would be a monumental confidence boost for the entire market. It could flip the narrative from Bitcoin is old and could be broken by new tech to Bitcoin adapts and incorporates the best of new tech. In the long run, that's bullish in my opinion, not financial advice, haha. It's like how the internet didn't die. When new threats emerged, it evolved with better protocols and encryption. I suspect Bitcoin, being software at its heart, can do the same, provided the will is there. When I started this deep dive, I was admittedly worried that an incredible technology like quantum computing might spell the end of something I believe in deeply, Bitcoin. After researching and talking to others, I've come to a more nuanced view. Yes, the quantum threat is real, and we'd be fools to ignore it. Google's recent breakthrough was a splash of cold water, waking us up to the fact that the countdown has begun. But it's also a call to action. Bitcoin doesn't have to be a sitting duck. The same human ingenuity that created Bitcoin, and that is creating these quantum machines, can be applied to safeguard it. I found it poetic that the crypto community is already searching for answers in the esoteric world of zero-knowledge proofs and post-quantum algorithms. It tells me that Bitcoin is meant to survive. It has an immune system forming, if you will. Will there be challenges? Absolutely. Surprises? Count on it. There might be false alarms where someone claims quantum hack that turn out to be something else, or there might be contentious debates on how to upgrade. Heck, there might even be a blockchain split or new coins positioning themselves as quantum-safe Bitcoin forks. We've seen stranger things. But all that is just history yet to be written. As an investor and enthusiast, my job, and yours, is to stay informed but not be easily swayed by FUD, fear, uncertainty, doubt, or by complacency. This video was my way of confronting the fear head-on and sharing what I learned. If you made it this far, I hope you feel not panicked but empowered with knowledge. The future of Bitcoin in the age of quantum computing isn't set in stone. It's something we will actively shape through research, development, and yes, sometimes heated community arguments. Remember, Bitcoin has a way of surviving existential threats, often emerging stronger. I'm betting that with quantum, it will be the same story, a new chapter of evolution. Instead of a tombstone, quantum computing might end up being the catalyst for Bitcoin's next leap forward. And who knows, maybe one day I'll make a follow-up video titled "How Bitcoin Beat the Quantum Threat." I would love to tell that story. Thank you for joining me in this personal investigation. It's been a bit of a roller coaster. Fear, curiosity, deep research, and cautious optimism. Stay safe out there, stay curious, and keep your keys secure. If you found this deep dive helpful, consider sticking around. Why not hit subscribe and join me next time? Until then, take care and HODL on.